time it was good because I hadn't been good. You're right. My daughter's a special ed teacher in Cincinnati.
Oh, is she?
Oh, she's got her hands full.
Oh, yeah. But
I mean, oh man, I did like first told buddies of mine they've been in that industry. I'm like, guys, these guys are retired. They're like,
Dave, I'm gonna start.
do what it
We're
works.
12:15.
We're good.
All right.
Let me hold it.
All right, sounds good. It is 12:15 and we are going to go ahead and start the meeting. We have a newbie today. Our rookie is going to be Jordan, is going to lead us in the prayer and four-way test. No pressure, Jordan. You attorneys love to stand up in front of people and talk.
I just joined and then I already got asked to get up and do something. So I'm a little nervous. So we just start with a prayer?
Start with the prayer.
Okay, you pray with me. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this incredible group of committed individuals who are dedicated to making our county a better place. We just pray that you would bless our speaker today, and thank you again for giving us the opportunity to get together. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge.
Prayer. Or the
Prayer,
pledge.
pledge,
Yes.
pledge.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Four-way test. First. Second. Third. And fourth.
Let's give a round of applause there. Sean, we asked you to be on our best behavior. The judge is here today, and she is not giving out get out of jail cards.
I'll try my best.
All right, thank you.
All right. It's good to see a jurist, a person of integrity here today. Thank you, Suzanne, for being here. We had a judge go in the hospital last week. Evidently, his wife was sending out some text messages, and he wasn't feeling so good about that. So you gotta be careful what you send out there, evidently. It gives you flu-like symptoms, I'm told. We also had a Nebraska congressman. He just resigned from office. He had a bad cell connection with a billionaire from Nigeria. Just happened to drop about $25,000 into his campaign account. You gotta watch the bad cell connections. Then we had a president yesterday that evidently said something stupid. That's never happened before. I don't know what all the news is about. But you know what? Hey, we're on a roll, ladies and gentlemen. Reds opening day on the road, Atlanta, April 7th, and then we're coming home on the 12th. We're going to play the Cleveland Guardians at 4 o'clock. There's just two big statues as you go into Cleveland of these things that have guarded that place, and we're hoping that they take care of Baker Mayfield next year. Thank you.
Thank you, John. To quote the great philosopher SpongeBob SquarePants, the program last week was ginormous, and we'd like to thank everyone that put the program together. It was great to have the building just completely full, and I was watching the one teacher from St. Paul's, her name was Sarah, and she sat there and just smiled the whole presentation. And our teachers are definitely the unsung heroes. So again, thanks to Barb and her committee for putting that together. I'm setting up an open house on April 25th, and that is bring a friend to Rotary or bring an old Rotarian back to Rotary. And what I want to do is I'll give kind of a international overview, then each committee give an overview of what we do. So start thinking about that now. And if you don't bring a friend, you will feel guilty. And I'm already laying the guilt trip here. So start thinking about who we can bring to Rotary.
Is this at our regular meeting?
Yes, this is going to be our regular Monday meeting. Then we might bribe people with a free lunch. Then Don, feel free to introduce our judge here today. And again, she's not giving out get out of jail passes here, so please be on your best behavior here.
Yeah, I'll have to clean up my act, I guess. It's a pleasure to have Judge Citrilla come back. She was here as a guest when Allison Ball was here presenting to our club, our state treasurer. And both Allison and Jordan said, you should have Suzanne come and give a program at the Rotary Club. And I thought, well, that's a good idea, because a lot of people aren't really familiar with our court system and the different courts that we have. I mean, I was in traffic court when I was 17, but that's about my only exposure. And it's a good idea to know what we have going on, and probably some of the stories that happen in those courts, most of us would probably be oblivious to. I do have to ask the question though, how would you rule in a Will Smith versus but would you please welcome Suzanne Citrullo, the judge.
Well, it is truly an honor to be here. It is very difficult to walk into this room though, because I did last attend when Allison Ball was presenting and Jordan brought her, and wasn't she wonderful? Oh my gosh, she was not only passionate about financial literacy for our youth, but she talked about how you could find money on some website. I mean, who didn't go look that up, right? I think Pat Rafferty was the one who said that he had done that before. And so when Dawn asked me to speak, I said, well, she was so great. Just give me a few weeks before I come. I don't want to follow her, but now I just reminded you, and he's reminded you how great she was. So maybe I've sufficiently lowered any expectations you might have about me being a public speaker. I truly am not. Although I'm a judge, I'm in a court, the Court of Appeals, that I don't have to do a lot of public speaking. I'm no longer in the courtroom. In fact, I'm mostly reading briefs and reviewing videotapes of trials and records. Sometimes I think I ask very good questions of the attorneys when they argue in front of me, but for the most part, I'm not speaking like this very often, so I do get nervous whenever I get to do that. But before I went on the bench, I had 30 years of experience trying cases, which also made me very nervous, but I enjoyed letting juries decide the facts and reach a resolution. And again, lawyers notoriously think they ask good questions. So although I can't share a whole lot about what our court is doing, I can share a few of the questions that attorneys have asked in actual court proceedings. You know, in my day, we called this the Perry Mason moment. I think some of you might remember that, or whatever the new TV show is. The Bull, I guess, is the new legal show. But here's a few examples of the stupid questions that lawyers have asked from actual court proceedings. Now, doctor, isn't it true that when a person dies in his sleep, in most cases, he just passes quietly away and doesn't know anything about it until the next morning? True question. Or this one, witness, I want to show you exhibit 3 and ask you, do you recognize this picture? Yes, that is me. Were you present when that picture was taken? Now, those were not my own original questions, but I was cross-examining a witness in a case a few years ago about a claim that she had lost the consortium of her marriage. And I don't know if you all know that term refers to the intimate relationship between a husband and wife. And the claim was that she no longer had that relationship because of an injury sustained in an accident. And my client in that particular case was the one who had caused the accident. So I'd done a little research, and I knew that during the years since the accident, this young woman had actually had a baby. So thinking I'm very clever, I said, but ma'am, isn't it true that you and your husband conceived a child since that accident? To which she replied on the record in front of the jury, "That doesn't mean I enjoyed it." So I just wanted to share a few funny things with you that happened in the courtroom, even though I'm no longer in the courtroom. I think it's been interesting as I've become a judge that I am getting a lot more calls for legal advice than when I was an attorney and I could charge for my legal advice. But of course, as a judge, I can't give legal advice. So I promptly tell people that are calling me now, you need to find a good attorney. But when I was a practicing lawyer, I also did a lot of adoptions for families throughout Kentucky and Ohio, which was my true joy as an attorney. And I had to give that up too. But my interest started when my sister adopted my nephew when I was in law school over 40 years ago. And I knew that I wanted to practice in that area, and I've been personally involved in placing over 350 children with forever families through adoption. That nephew of mine, adopted by my sister, went on to become a lawyer. And then several years later, I had an opportunity to become an adoptive mom, and my youngest child, who we adopted, is now serving our country in the Navy, and he's stationed in Guam. So being an attorney gave me an opportunity to do a lot of good, and I hope now as a judge that I can continue that in that role. But I was thinking about Allison and how impressive she was, and I thought, what I really want to talk about is women in general. And because my journey is not so unique, but the timing of it, I think, is what a lot of women have experienced, some of them in the room here with us, or what some of your wives or daughters may have experienced. And it is Women's History Month, if you hadn't heard that. And I learned that the Rotary, not so very long ago, was limited just to men. So I'm going to come back to that history in just a little bit. But I was, just to tell you a little bit about my background, I was raised by a stay-at-home mom. My mom and dad had 6 children, and dad was a pipe fitter, and mom made all our clothes and quilted and canned and, just did all these things that I really wasn't very good at. But unlike my sisters who had all those craft skills that I never really seemed to pick up on, I was pretty good in school. And my dad had a theory that he shared with all of us girls in the family that we had to go to school to have something to fall back on. And, that sounds kind of archaic now in a way, I guess, but that was the way I was raised. We weren't expected to go out and support our families. We were supposed to have that if our husbands couldn't take care of us. And some of you may have, been raised in that same time period. In those days, and I don't know if any of you will remember that, but there was a saying about women who went to college that we were going to get our MRS degree. Any of you remember that saying? MRS. We were going to find a husband. So that was what they used to say. And again, that isn't something we would probably say nowadays, but that was kind of the time period, or at least the area where I was raised. That was what we encountered. But I did do well in school, so I got a lot of scholarships. I went to Morehead State University intending to just teach, because all I knew that women could do is teach or be a nurse, and I wasn't good with the sight of blood. So I had some wonderful teachers, and again, was so glad that you all honored 4 of your Boone County teachers last week. And I had never seen or heard of a woman attorney in my area when I started college in 1977. So I was looking into, again, women in history, and Sally Ride, if you all remember, was the first American woman to go into space. And she talked about how she was struck by how people were so amazed by that, and just said they never thought that was something they would ever see. And she stated this: young girls need to see role models in whatever careers they may choose, just so they can picture themselves doing those jobs someday. And she's attributed with this very famous quote that you can't be what you can't see. And I think that is true. I didn't grow up thinking that I could be a lawyer. Certainly never dreamed that I would be a judge. But then again, it was a good way to grow up, a good family background and good values that I think are universal and continue for all of us. Fortunately, I had a big brother who went to law school, and while he was in law school at UK, I was at Moorhead, and he encouraged me to go to law school because, again, something we wouldn't say now, but it was true, that they were actually looking for women in the legal field. And to me, that's, as I did my research and thought back about my life, that is when things really started to change in those early 1980s. That is when my mentor, Judge Judy West, was elected as the first woman judge in Northern Kentucky, and she was in Kenton County. But then she went on to get appointed by the first woman governor in Kentucky, Martha Lane Collins, and she became the first woman on the appellate court bench in 1987. And then I became her staff attorney when was working for her when she received that recognition and became a judge. Now back then, I remember she used to talk about this all the time, that when she called to order her first robe, they only came in men's sizes. So they asked her if she was a 40 or a 42. And in contrast, when I was appointed to the court this summer, my court, the Court of Appeals, is made up of 14 judges throughout the entire state. And 7 of them are men and 7 of them are currently women. So we're evenly divided, and I had no trouble ordering a woman's size robe. So again, I think, you know, when you look back on just the history of what we have done as women, and if I can just kind of tie it in with another personal story. Judge West died very young. She was only 49 and she died in office in 1991. And when she passed, I was working for her and I went through a lot of her, I had to clean out her office and everything for the new judge to come on. And I kept some of the folders and stories and speeches that she gave because, one, I had to speak a lot about her and her contributions since she was that first woman in those late 80s and 1990s. I gave a lot of speeches about her. But I also just liked seeing her handwriting. So 35 years later, you know, I still have a lot of things that she wrote and then I kept. So a couple months ago, when I was invited to come to this group and asked Don to give me a little more time to make you forget about Allison. But a couple of months ago, I started looking through some notes and of her speeches. And I found something that she had written on this yellow legal pad, a story that she often spoke about of a colleague of hers who had a daughter. And that daughter said she went to school in the 3rd grade and she told her class she wanted to be a judge, and they laughed and said, girls can't be judges. Well, that colleague was Doug Stevens, who was a judge in Kenton County for over 30 years. And he was very close to Judy West. And so he went in to Judge West and got a picture that she had of her sitting on the court as the first woman on the court. And he let his daughter take that into school and show them that, you know, girls can be judges too. Well, I ran across the notes of that speech just a couple of months ago, and it was a very emotional moment in my office because that little girl, that 3rd grader that my judge spoke about, is currently my staff attorney. And we didn't even know that that was in the notes. And, you know, 35 years later, we run across the reference to this young lady who's now working for me, and I'm working in the very seat that Judge West was at. So it was emotional. But wait, there's more. The notes that I pulled out at the top of the page are election stories that Judge West told as she was going out on the campaign. And on 4/25 of 1988, she has the date written, she spoke to the Republican Women's Club of Boone County. And on page 3, she starts talking about, so I was invited to speak to the Rotary Club on a particular Monday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is pretty amazing, right? So, you know, again, to follow in her footsteps, I just think it's a pretty neat story. And I thought it was also just neat to show, again, how things have changed and how far women have come. But I do believe we benefit from diversity. I think having, 14 judges made up equally of men and women is helpful, because we do all see things a little different. And I know there's a lot more men in this group, so I hope I'm not losing you right now. But the thing that I think is awesome about the diversity of having gender in all of our careers is that we do all bring something different to the table. Last week I was in Frankfurt with the court for a couple days, and my husband of almost 40 years in the neighborhood that we've lived in for 24 years asked me 3 times, what day is trash day? But in contrast, I have to count on him, or I do count on him, to remember when to change the oil in my car, because I never even think about that. So, again, we all have strengths and bring something to the table, I think. I certainly believe that for me, I guess what I'm sharing is that I think other women certainly made it easier for me to get to where I am at this point in my life. But I'm also okay with some of the standard stereotypes that we all have. When you look at the entire history of our country, though, and organizations like the Rotary, this change came about really in my lifetime, I think. I would say mostly in the 1980s that things really began to become more even. For example, in your own organization, I learned that until the 1980s, women were not allowed membership in the Rotary. And the biographer of Dale Carnegie described that it was in 1970s that they made an exception and allowed his secretary to come just because she could take notes. And then they started allowing women to kind of help out with activities and clubs. But it wasn't until 1987 that a lawsuit was filed out in California, where a lot of lawsuits start, that claimed that the Rotary clubs were business establishments subject to regulation under the Civil Rights Act. And the Rotary International appealed that decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Rotary attorney argued that this decision would threaten to force us to take in everyone like we're some sort of motel. And again, that's probably not something we would argue nowadays, right? But the tide was shifting, and a few other states began allowing women to join while that case was pending. But it was on May 4th of 1987 that the U.S. Supreme Court confirmed the decision allowing women to be members. And then I understand the first female club president of the Rotary was in 1987. And women currently account for 22% of the International Rotary membership. And again, I did my research because that's what I do pretty well at. I understand that your president is getting sworn in this summer is going to be the first woman president of Rotary International. Or at least that's what I found. I hope I got that right. You guys can correct me. So, kind of tying in as well, if I can for a moment, with my own life, 1987 was a big year for me. My oldest daughter was born, kicking and screaming, and so I tell her that that's the year that things started turning around. All these things happened in 1987. And in 1987, when Judge West was appointed or won the election to remain on the Court of Appeals, the election day was November 8th, which happened to be my daughter's birthday. And ironically, election day this year is going to be November 8th. And my daughter was named, not Judy, but she was named Nicole Danielle. Nicole stands for, in the biblical terms, victory. And Danielle, or Daniel, is for judge. So I hope that that's some sort of an omen that all these similarities are going to come to fruition for me. But regardless, it has been a great opportunity for me just to give back some of my experience in serving the judiciary. And it is a very important court, as was alluded to. We consider the cases, 90% of the cases that are tried throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky will end up in the Court of Appeals for final resolution. The Supreme Court takes only about 10% of the cases that are heard. So we have to consider all kinds of cases all over the state. And, we have to follow and uphold the law because we're looking at what the trial courts have done, but we're not making law, we're not legislating. We leave that to the legislature, and the Supreme Court generally deals with the constitutional type issues. But, so, again, I think it's important to have that diversity that we have on the court right now. And we have a lot of female judges all over Boone County and Campbell and Kenton County as well. And just quickly, as a nation, I wanted to share some of the statistics of men and women in the workplace. According to the data that I found, most of the jobs where we still have that 50-50 split, like on the court, are desk type jobs, legal, social, administrative type jobs. But senior management still is filled 75% by men in those kind of jobs. Interestingly, though, I've learned that women pharmacists now make up more than 50% of the workforce. I think it's kind of cool. And more than half, in fact, 60% of veterinarians are women, which again is, I think, interesting because that's a long, schooling, rigorous as well. 2 years ago was the first time that the majority of U.S. medical students were women. That was in 2019. And I know because I talked to the dean of Chase Law School this week that we still have and have had since 2016 more than 50% of the enrollees in law school are women. And so you have to assume that these things are going to continue, this trend. But I have noticed as I'm going out and talking to police and firefighters, 80% of that workforce is still men. The majority of female-dominated jobs are still the caregivers in our society. And again, I think this kind of ties up with Women's History Month that I alluded to, because I learned that Women's History Month was started in what year? 1987. And in 1987 and every year since, they've been trying to celebrate women's history and women's contributions. And the board of the National Women's History Organization, or whoever makes up these rules, they select a particular theme or focus every year. And this year they said it was to remind us of the importance of caregivers and healers, people that promote and sustain our future. And to further that theme, they sent out a notice stating, "We encourage all the communities throughout the country to honor local women who bring and historically have brought priceless gifts to their families, their workplaces, and neighborhoods. These are the women who, as counselors and therapists, teachers, doctors, nurses, mothers, and grandmothers, listen and comfort, provide healing, and ease suffering." And I just love that that was their goal this year, particularly after what we've lived through the last couple of years. And as I'm out campaigning in 13 counties, because I meet people every day who just inspire and remind me of how blessed we are to live in this greatest nation on earth. And it's people like you, the Rotary clubs of the world, and organizations and women who give care to others that make that true, that make it such a wonderful country. So because I know you all are so instrumental in giving to your community, and because I also know as givers that the best thing you can do is thank other people and give more, I'm going to conclude my comments by giving each of you a little thank you card. Let me distribute. Say things like, "You are so great," or "You're a rock star," or "Thank you for what you've done for me." And I would just like to ask you, in honor of Women's History Month, if you would all just hand deliver or give or mail a thank you card to some woman who's influenced you, and try to make them feel good about what they have done. And in doing that, I have to tell you that one thing attorneys learn when we start practicing is to become friends with the clerk. So I have my thank you card for Miss Pat Goodside, who was a mentor to me and very kind to me when I knew nothing. So if you will do that, and then again, just, thank you for letting me come and talk about this. And if I can ever answer any specific questions, to the extent I'm able to do that as a judge, I'm happy to do that and tell you more about the courts, but that's all.
Thank you for those heartfelt response. That was beautiful. And it's interesting. I was thinking in my life, there's people in your life that come to you for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it's amazing those people that come to you as mentors in your life that mean very special to you. And now don't be getting emotional on this over here. I'm Pat. Thanks again. Kentucky is interesting. I actually had to spend a chance to spend some time with Martha Lane Collins. And she was actually, I looked it up, was elected in 1983. And you talk about a woman with a lot of leadership, and she fought the men like crazy. And to hear her story tell about how her landing Toyota and going over to Japan, which is all men that she negotiated with, it's absolutely a phenomenal story. So again, thank you. One of the things I forgot is our Happy Bucks. Brad is like chomping at the bit here, man. Come on, he's like waving that dollar. Come on, tell me about it.
Eager to contribute to the Happy Pot, as if any of you are veterans of the Grandparents Club. Karen and I, we just had our second granddaughter. Truly have said, it is absolutely true that grandchildren are truly the gift that God gives us for putting up with raising children. It's a joy.
Anybody else with something happy? We need a happy buck here. Oh my gosh, let me get this from Mark very quickly.
Our son in Indianapolis told us some of the.
Oh, wonderful. Any other good news?
I'm happy to see all these younger people joining Rotary.
Absolutely.
We got Casey and Brad and
Jerry Stewart.
Gary Stewart.
Hey, welcome back to Rotary, Brad. But I think that's wonderful.
Well, good. Well, I am putting my happy buck up. My prodigal son came home from Colorado, and they are definitely calling it the boomer generation, boomerang generation for a reason. So part of the breakup is he's like, Dad, I want to bring the dog home. I'm like, no, Drew, keep the dog with the ex-girl. No, Dad, I'm bringing the dog home. Drew, keep the dog. No, Dad, I'm bringing the. I didn't realize how big a Great Dane is. Those are absolutely massive animals. And I've got a little golden doodle that's about this big and about that tall. So we've got some trying times at our house. Just a reminder, we're going to cancel the April 11th, September. Where'd that come from? April 11th for spring break. And that always seems to be a very low attendance. Then again, what's that?
Is this group going to Panama City?
Harry, if you want to leave the spring break party down there, and well, I could see you on the beach doing those beer shots and those the sex on the beach drinks. I could see that there, Harry.
It's time to move on here, Dwayne.
Okay, time to move on. Is there any other club business?
Here today.
What's that? We got the judge here, right? So be on your best behavior. Guys, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.